Okay, today, day 321. What we're going to work on today is figure out whether or not. Oh, actually, let me check on the audio. Okay, looks like audio is working. Let me turn on the chat just in case anybody has questions here. Okay. I got this one set aside. Today, we're just going to be on Redfin. We are going to be analyzing some deals here to see whether or not it's going to cash flow for renting these properties out at Section 8. So today, we're in Birmingham. This market we've looked at quite a little bit. Today, I got a property in Fairfield, Alabama. So today, I'm just going down a little bit further. Today, we're searching on 4-bedroom, single-family homes. Any bathrooms doesn't matter. And I'm just looking for properties under like 200 grand because I know deals above 150 grand don't really work yet. So let's go ahead. Look at this. I've looked it up here. So I'm just learning the market a little bit better. So today, let's look at this property. 539 Selma Road. Okay, this property is a 4-2. Let's look at a condition home. Looks pretty renovated. I don't see any big issues. Maybe you got to repaint the foundation a little bit on the outside. But for the most part, this property looks pretty turnkey. The tile's a little bit weird. I can't tell if that shape is intentional or something's going on with the paint. But for the most part, the floor looks good. Kitchen looks solid, or at least it's been repainted. So I'm going to call this a relatively turnkey property. Okay. Now, because it's quote unquote turnkey, look, investor property, someone has already leased there through 2026, I'm guessing. For $1,190 renovated thing. Okay, so it's been listed on property for 4 days. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, but when we're looking at a deal, is we want to figure out what county the property is in. So when you do control find and just look for county, you can see that this property is in Jefferson County. The next thing I want to do is I want to look up the fair market rents, the FMR. And this is the rent ceiling. So if you Google the word HUD FMR, HUD space FMR, click on the first link, scroll down, click on access to small area FMRs, you're going to be able to look up the FY 2025 small area FMRs. They just released this like 3 days ago. I think it was always 2024. But when you look at it every day, you notice these differences, right? So now you're going to do by state, by county. So I selected right here, Alabama and Jefferson County. And now I'm going to get by zip code, by bedroom count, what the rent ceiling is for this property. And this is in 35020, 35020. And you're going to see that the rent ceiling for a 3-bed is $1,420. And then the rent ceiling for a 4-bed is $1,580. Okay, this just got updated. So let's write these numbers down. $1,580 and $1,420 for a 3-bed. And the reason I'm writing down all these details right here is because my partners already know how to analyze deals. So this just saves them a little bit of headache, a little bit of time, so that they already know where all the numbers come from. Now that I got my rent ceiling for a 4-bed, I need to go and now compare it to my market rents. So how do I do that? To do that, I go to affordablehousing.com. I go to the owner section. I go to the market rent estimator. It's going to bring me to this page. Once it brings me to this page, now I'm going to plug in the address of the subject property, which is 539 Selma Road in Bessemer, Alabama, just outside of Birmingham. And now I'm select 4 bedrooms. And the number I care most about here is this number right here on the bottom right. It says that for 25 units within a 3-mile radius, the average rent is $1,300. Okay, $1,300. I'm just write 1302. Okay, it's a 3-mile radius. The county's average rent for a 4-bed is $1,933, $1,440 for the city, and $1,315 for the ZEP. So now the reason we have to use the lower of the two rents, $1,300 versus $1,580, is because of a test called the rent reasonableness test. And the rent reasonableness test comes from this website right here. It's called the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook. Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook used to be called Section 8, right? They rebranded from Section 8 to Housing Choice Voucher. because of all the negative connotations that were associated with Section 8. So they rebranded to housing choice voucher. Now, in Section 2.2 of this guidebook, there's a test called the rent reasonableness test. And it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA, which is the Public Housing Authority, that's what it stands for, must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So you cannot charge more rent to a voucher holder simply because they are a voucher holder, right? For the obvious reasons, okay? Now, in determining comparability, obviously things like size, unit type matters. So you can't compare a single family home against an apartment because that's not an apples to apples comparison. But for the most part, if you are on affordablehousing.com and you're looking for 4 bedrooms, chances are these are all single family homes or townhomes or whatever, because they don't generally build 4-bedroom apartments very often. So that's why I have pretty good confidence that this 1,300 number is going to be relevant, is going to be used as the reasonable rent. Obviously, the condition, the finishes, right? That stuff still matters. So if you have a 500 square feet home that's 4-bedroom, which seems impossible anyways, right? You can't charge the same rent as a 4-bedroom home that is 1,500 square feet almost. All right. So let's go ahead and plug some of these numbers in. So in the asking price in this template, again, if you guys want a copy of the spreadsheet, you guys can go to affordablehousing.io. That's affordablehousing.io. Click on the Get Deal Analysis tool. Put in your name, email, your phone number. Promise I won't spam you. This is the quickest and fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got a few different spreadsheets. I tweaked them, I modified them, and I combined them so that I can analyze the deal as fast as possible, to be honest with you. Because I don't want to waste all this time looking at deals that are not going to cash flow. Right? That's how you burn out. If you keep analyzing all these deals for no return on your effort, then that's how you burn out, because you spend all that time and energy for nothing. All right, so back to this. Now, I got $130,000 for my asking price. I'll put that in B4. For my renovations, I'm going to go to my rehab calculator spreadsheet. And typically what I do for every single property is that I usually set aside $1,500 for the roof. So that's in row 6. Just in case there's any patching that needs to get done, I can now have that in place, put that aside in case there's some issues with the roof that I cannot tell from just the superficial photos that I see online. I usually set aside another $500 for landscaping, just because if there's grass, whatever, there's going to be some upkeep outside that you're going to have to pay someone for before you get a rent ready. So just make sure you set aside some money for that. For interior painting, now there were some panels in here that looked okay, but who knows if they're fully okay. So I like to just set aside maybe about 20% of the square footage. So this is 1,500 square feet roughly divided by 5. So that's 300 square feet. So I'm at $3 a square foot. I'm setting aside about $9 to do some touch-up paint or just have a little bit of room in case. All right. So now I got my toilet repair. So there are 2 bathrooms in here. So typically what I do is I replace the toilets with high-pressure flush toilets. They're about $450 each. And this allows me to prevent most clogged toilet calls, right? These high-pressure flush toilets, they flush really quick, really fast, and there's a little bit of power in them. So if you ever get a clogged toilet call, chances are it's going to cost you, call it $200, $250, maybe $300 even if you're unlucky on an emergency, to get a plumber out there to unclog it, blah, blah, blah. And for that amount of spend, you might as well you should have just gotten a new toilet in the first place and prevented that service call, and you prevent that stress and that loss of time and energy just for you to address that clogged toilet. All right, so that's it. That's what I have here. So this comes up to with a 20% contingency on there, just in case, $4,560. So I got $4,560 for my total renovations reserve right here in B6. For my rent, I'm gonna use the lower of the two, right? So I'm gonna use $1,300 for my rent on this property because of the rent reasonableness test, right? Again, we talked about that earlier. For my property taxes, I'm gonna get the property tax number right from REDFIN, from their estimate. Obviously, you should always double check with the county assessor records to verify the tax amount. But for now, I'm just gonna trust REDFIN and use $76. For my insurance estimate, it says $101. So I'm gonna do equals 101 times 1.2. The reason I'm multiplying that estimate by 1.2 is because I'm adding a 20% premium by multiplying by 1.2. Because usually that estimate for insurance is for a home that's typically used for a primary residence property. When you switch it to an investment property, you're going to see that the insurance premium is going to be higher because the insurance company views an investment property as higher risk, hence why they will charge you more premium. All right. So now for my other expenses, I got 10% set aside for my maintenance, my war chest. This is money such as landscaping, but it also includes setting aside money every single month for a future capital replacement, right? Thank you so much for coming on live. I appreciate you. And this is how we set aside money because this money doesn't belong to us, right? We know that at some point the roof is going to get replaced. That might be 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years you get lucky. We know that air conditioner is going to break down. 5, 10, 15 years. I just spent $5,000 replacing just the parts at our Scottsdale property for the HVAC. All right, that's real money. And then we all know the water heater is gonna go out in like 7, 10 years, right? Assuming you bought it brand new. So this money doesn't belong to you, right? So for the HVAC replacement, if I didn't set aside $130 every single month, right? If I do a $5,000 repair divided by 130, that's 38 months of me thinking I made an extra $130 when I didn't, right? One repair like that will wipe out all the money or all the profit that you overstated because you underestimate your expenses. So don't be that person. Make sure you set aside money every single month for maintenance and CapEx because those expenditures will happen. It's just a matter of time. So this money doesn't belong to you. Don't be that person that gets caught and realize that you didn't make money for the past 5, 10, 15 years because you didn't set aside money. All right. I got 10% set aside for property management. Now, could you save some money by self-managing property? Yeah. Could you get some bulk discounts and get down to 8% if you have a few homes? Sure. But I always typically recommend to just underwrite with property management because why did we all get into real estate for, right? We probably got into real estate for the pursuit of financial freedom, freedom of time to do whatever you want, financial flexibility. Well, if you don't have property management in place, then you are always going to be tied down to your property. Meaning if you get a weekend call for a clogged toilet, you have to respond to it, right? There's no choice. You have to respond to that. So if you don't underwrite with property management in place now, you might never leave your property management job that you just bought yourself into. So you would have just been buying your own job there. So don't be that person. And I got 5% for vacancy. Vacancy just means that there is going to be months or a time period where your property is going to be empty. So if you don't set aside money every single month, right, then that's not truly representative of how much money you're going to make because everybody moves out of your home, right? Could some Section 8 tenants stay in there a little bit longer? Yeah, they could. Or they can move out every 2 to 3 years, right? You never know. But what you can do is you can try to keep the vacancy down. You can try to be a better landlord. You can try to address the issues as soon as they come up. That's one way you can keep it down, right? Or you just create a really, really beautiful home and you renovate it correctly from the beginning so that you can attract the best residents who want to stay there forever instead of just coming to your home and then already looking for, hey, where am I going to move next? A lot of things in your control. All right, so for today, I'm going to assume that I'm putting a 25% down on this property. So if I were to buy 25% down, I can calculate my down payment in E19, cell E19. I'm going to equals B4, which is my asking price, multiplied by my down payment percentage in F19, and that's going to give me $32,500 for my down payment, right? I got 2.5% for my closing cost estimates, right? And I got $4,560 for my renovation reserve. Now, I have to figure out how much money I need to finance. So assuming I'm using a typical debt service coverage ratio loan, DSCR is what they commonly call it, I am assuming I'm using it for 8%. And my start date, let's just use today's date, 8/15. Okay. No balloon. And then I got my finance amount in K6 is going to equals to my asking price in B4 minus my down payment in E19. So I will be financing $97,500 at 8%. Now, if everything else held still, right, with all my expenses, so I'm renting out this property at a 4-bedroom for $1,300, I would be cash flowing, assuming all my assumptions stayed the same, $63 a month. And that's assuming a cash and cash return of 1.9%. Now, for me, that is not a deal. Again, it's not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Simply showing you all the work I'm doing every single day, putting in reps, get a little bit better. Right? For 1.9%, that's probably not worth what I call the execution risk. What does execution risk mean? Is it worth me spending all this time and energy for a 1.9% return on my capital? Probably not. I mean, I can go buy a 30-year treasury bond for like 4%. So that's a trade-off that you have to decide, right? Is 2% worth the amount of time and energy you got to spend analyzing the deal, getting through inspections, getting a contractor out there to give me a bid, closing on a property, making sure the contractor actually does what he says he's going to do? Is he going to renovate the property and do it on time, on budget? Is he going to screw me, or is he going to steal money from me? Is he going to walk away with the capital that I spent? These are all issues. These are all real issues. It's not all unicorns and rainbows. These are all real problems that can come up. And then when I work with the Section 8 authority, well, what if I fail my Section 8 inspection? What if I fail my Section 8 and I can't fill the tenant for another month or two? So now my holding cost goes up for another month or two, right? You still got to pay the mortgage. You still got to pay for the maintenance. That's real money, and it's going to affect your cash and cash return even more. That's what I mean by execution risk, right? There is inherent risk for you doing a project from the beginning to end, and there might be a risk later, right? What if the tenant doesn't pay? What if you don't do a good job of screening the tenants and they don't pay their portion of the rents, even though some of it or most of it might be guaranteed by the government? There could be a tenant portion that they don't pay. So it's really, really crucial that you do a good job with buying the right deal, analyzing the deal very well. And this is how you do it, right? So let's go through a few scenarios. So if it's not a deal at 130 grand, watch what happens, right? As I lower my asking price from $130,000 to let's say 100 grand, I'm now at 8.5%, right? Watch what happened to that cash and cash return in E9. If I go to $95,000, now all of a sudden I'm at 10%. Okay, this might work. Okay, so at $1,300 rent, assuming everything else stay constant, I'll be cash for $255 a month at 10% interest rate. But this is assuming I bought this property at $95,000. So when people talk about your buy box, right, all of a sudden you can say, well, I know in Birmingham in the zip code 35020, if I can get a property for 95 grand for a turnkey property, right, that means less than $5,000 rehab. Now all of a sudden this can be a deal. Let's go through another scenario, right? There's been a lot of talks about interest rates dropping. Well, what if my interest rate dropped to 7% instead of 8%, right? 1 full point. See how my cash and cash return just jumped to 11.88? Well, now my willingness to pay goes up. So instead of paying 95 grand to get a 10% return, now all of a sudden I can pay 102 or 101,500. There you go. Now all of a sudden, instead of paying 95, I can afford to pay 101,500. And the reason I did that is because so you guys can see how much did that 1% change in interest rate affected my willingness to pay, because now I'm at 101,500 instead of 95 grand. And that could be a very big difference, right? A seller might have a sticker shock, or they don't want to sell less than 100. Well, you can't pay more than 100, or you can't pay 100 unless it's 7% interest rate. So that's something for you to figure out. The last scenario I'll probably go through today is, let's say you lock up this property, right? I know some of us are really scared, like, hey, what if something really happens and I find out some problems in here? Well, the best way to mitigate that risk or that anxiety is to be aware of, well, if something bad does happen, what is it going to cost me? If you can assign a number to that problem, you can feel a little bit less anxious about it, because now it seems controllable. It's definable. That problem has a number that can be applied to fix it. So using that as a deal right now, if I multiply this by 2 or 3, let's say it was 5x, right? Let's say you open up the wall and you realize there's some mold, and all of a sudden the panels don't look as good. And all of a sudden, that $5,000 rehab is now a $23,000 rehab. Man, that could be a nightmare for some people, right? Now you're thinking like, what am I going to do? I just want this contract. Well, as long as you had the inspection contingency in there, now you can negotiate. Okay, my rehab just 5x from 45,860 to 22.8K. So Now, when you see what happened to my cash and cash return, it went down from a 10% to a 6.42. So the only way to get this property with the cash and cash return back up to 10% is to drop the asking price further. So if I drop this to $80,000, now all of a sudden it goes back up to a 10.1% return, right? So fear not, I mean, the seller might not agree to it, but you can still go back to $379 of cash flow a month, right? This is still going to be a 10.1% cash and cash return, but now you can only pay the seller $80,000, right? And this was still assuming the rehab drop down. I mean, the renovation 5x to $22,800. You're still giving a 25% down, but your interest rate is still the same. It's still 7% because we're basing off of the prior scenario. So hopefully this helps you all, right? For every single property, there is a set of terms and a price that makes it a deal for your own circumstances, right? Obviously, some people might just want to break even on the cash flow, right? If they think they're in a high appreciating market, which is very speculative or very risky, in other words, they might say, hey, if I go up 5% on $1 million property and I can just break even, I mean, that's like 50 grand. Who cares if I don't make $100 of cash flow? Who cares if I don't make $300 of cash flow a month? I'm making 50 grand in appreciation, right? This is why this is not investment advice. Like, you really got to talk to your own investment professional, decide on what your risk tolerance is, and then figure out what your strategy is, what markets you want to invest in. Because who knows, maybe you want to diversify a little bit. Maybe you want some cash flow properties that make a boring $100 a month, or maybe you want your entire portfolio to go after the very high appreciating markets only because you have a stable W-2 income and you don't care about monthly cash flow because you make enough money already. So that's why it's really, really important for you to figure out what your risk is. All we're doing today is showing you how to take emotion out of the analysis process by analyzing this deal, coming up with multiple scenarios, right? The rent stayed the same, but the purchase price, we kept fluctuating it based on the interest rate, based on the renovations amount, all to get back to the same cash and cash return number. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Again, my hope is that you copy my homework, right? Just copy my homework, analyze the same deal I analyzed today, right? This is a deal that was right on Redfin that we found together. And analyze the deal with me, right? Look at this video again. It's going to be on YouTube, right in the live section on youtube.com/@cat_HG. My ask is just that you subscribe to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. And then just copy my homework and put it on your own YouTube channel. Literally do the same thing, but find one part, just one part, one phrase, one analogy, one metaphor. I don't care what it is. Explain it better than I did. Because this is how we make each other better. This is how we solve for this affordable housing problem. If we don't all get better together, if we all don't get a little bit less afraid of what's happening, then we're never going to solve this problem together. So that's my hope. I hope you truly look at this together with me. I hope you guys analyze deal together with me. And hopefully, don't be shy. If you're really shy, don't put yourself on camera. Honestly, you're supposed to get very little views. Look at that. Like, some of these views, I got like 6 views. Like, who cares? Probably no one's going to look at your videos right now. And you're not trying to look at your own videos, because what's most important is for you to figure out and feel confident that you know what you're doing. Because when a deal comes across your table and slaps you across the face, will you recognize that's a deal? Or if you have a partner that asks you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? You can now say, hey, I know this is a deal because I've been looking at deals that are past 321 days, and these were all not deals. I certainly hope that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. I certainly hope this was helpful. And again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for tuning to live today. I really, really appreciate your support. If you guys ever want to reach out to me, please DM me anytime on Instagram @InvestWithKentHe. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, just go to my website at affordablehousing.io, not .com.io, and click the gut deal analysis tool. All right. Have an amazing Friday, everybody. Hope you guys all spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. All right. Have an amazing day. I'll see you back again tomorrow for day 322 days in a row. Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.